What's good, y'all? And welcome to another preseason preview. In this one, we are going over the Charlotte Hornets. In case this is the first preseason preview video you're seeing of mine, basically what I do is go over everything that the team did in the offseason and then look into the future and see what we can expect from them coming up. But I'm just going to leave a reminder here to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you already haven't, and let's get right into it and look at the additions the Charlotte Hornets made this offseason. Although they didn't sign too many people, Charlotte was still pretty active this offseason, going out and trading for Josh Green, as well as drafting Tijan Salan with the 6th overall pick from the French LBN League. And before we talk about those players that they brought in, I want to talk about arguably the most important move Charlotte made this offseason, and that is signing their new head coach, Charles Lee. I love this signing because it really seemed like they needed a whole new direction down there in Charlotte. Charles is just coming off a championship with the Boston Celtics as an assistant coach. Before then, he was in Milwaukee when they won their championship. So as you can see, he has championship DNA. He's been around multiple teams that have won at the highest level, and he knows what it takes. And I'm hoping that he can bring some of that experience into Charlotte and kind of set the foundation here. I think he is going to be able to do that. I saw some footage of him coaching the Summer League team. He looked really intense, really locked in, looking like he really was ready to switch the whole narrative of what Charlotte has been. And what it's been is just been a lot of unorganized basketball. I think he can come in here and organize it a little bit. But then when you talk about the player moves they made, I really like the addition of Josh Green to this team. They were able to get him for just 2 second-round picks for kind of helping the Klay Thompson sign-and trade go through. They sent the 2 picks over and they brought in Josh Green. Simple as that, nice and easy. And I really like what he can bring to this team as like that 3-and-D level player. He's still pretty young, even though it seems like he's been in the league forever at this point. He's only 23 years old, so he'll be able to fit in the Charlotte timeline. And I just think that he is the perfect shooting guard to put alongside LaMelo Ball. He plays defense, and he's a great off-ball threat, catch and shoot, driving, closeouts, athletic. And now that he's not playing alongside Luka Doncic on a championship contending team, maybe he'll have some more opportunity to blossom his game a little bit. Who knows? Then when you talk about the draft pick of Tijan Salan, I don't really like it too much, especially at 6th overall. Obviously in this draft class, it's been regarded as a weaker draft class, and there's not too many difference between the 5th overall pick and the 20th overall pick. Like, they all could be the same. So I guess if Charlotte just really like this prospect, draft him, sure, it makes sense. They get paid to make those decisions. I don't. But personally, I just feel like he's too much of a project player where he really doesn't seem like he can have too big of a positive impact right away. I'm sure he's gonna play, and I'm sure he will show flashes of being a good NBA player because he was a 6th overall pick. I just wish they could have went maybe someone that would help them a little bit more now. And they're still relatively early in their rebuilding process, so I don't hate the pick, but everything that I've been seeing about Tijan has been he projects to maybe become a good shooter because his jump shot looks good. Defensively, he's not that good, but he's athletic and long, so maybe he could become a good 3-point shooter. His playmaking, he's shown flashes, so maybe he can become a good playmaker. There's no definitive skill that will translate right away to the NBA, so I don't really like that part about it, but I'm sure he will grow as a player. Then when you talk about the guys Charlotte lost this offseason, it's not many. The main guy is Bryce McGowens, who played 59 games last year for Charlotte. He's now on a 2-way deal with the Portland Trailblazers. Now, Charlotte fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you guys really care that Bryce McGowens is not on the team anymore. I only really included him because majority of the guys that left or the losses that you guys had last season happened at the trade deadline when you traded away Terry Rozier, PJ Washington, Gordon Hayward, all of those guys. That's where most of your losses or roster change happened. In this offseason, though, you're only really talking about Bryce McGowens, and when you brought in guys like Micic, Trey Mann, Josh Green, a healthy LaMelo Ball, you have a lot of guards on this roster that will very happily eat up those minutes that Bryce was getting, and they will definitely produce better than what Bryce was giving him. No disrespect to Bryce, but I don't think you guys should really be worrying too much about him not being on the team. And now that we have an idea of what this revamped Charlotte Hornets team looks like, let's take a look at a potential rotation for them. The starting lineup has LaMelo Ball, Josh Green, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and Mark Williams. While off the bench, you have Vasilije Micic, Trey Mann, Tajon Salon, Grant Williams, and Nick Richards. Maybe the NBA is just getting so much more talented, because I feel like every time I make a video and I look at the roster laid out, I think, yo, they kind of have a decent amount of talent on this roster. But with that being said, though, I do kind of like this Charlotte Hornets roster. I do think that they will be fun. A big contingency on this roster, though, is health, especially in LaMelo Ball and Mark Williams. LaMelo's coming off a season where he played 22 games, and Mark Williams is coming off a season where he played 19 games. Both of these guys are super important to Charlotte being successful and having a proper season this year. And I really do hope both of them can stay healthy, because, man, like, if they don't, it could be another rough year. When you talk about a guy like LaMelo Ball, last time he was healthy for a full season, he was an all-star. You know, he shot the ball incredibly well, playmaked his ass off, one of the best playmakers in the NBA, respectfully. You know, he was a top offensive engine in the NBA when he was healthy, and he hasn't been able to reach that level of healthiness again. And I really do think that this season, if he can come back fully healthy and play at that all-star caliber level, this team could be really, I don't want to say good, I don't want to set the bar too high, but they could be a competitive team, and I'm sure Charlotte Hornet fans are begging for that. The same goes for Mark Williams too, to a lesser degree, obviously, but he is still super important to the Charlotte Hornets defense. When you talk about protecting the rim and being a shot blocker, his big 7-foot frame is super important to that. Also, rebounding and closing out possessions. Mark Williams has been incredible rebounding the ball since he's came into the league. Again, though, he's just been struggling with his health. Both of these guys are healthy. I do think Charlotte can be pretty competitive. Another reason I think that they could be really competitive is Brandon Miller and his year 2 jump. He looked like he was getting better and better as the games went on last season. That second half of the year, he was incredible at scoring the ball. Super efficient with it at all 3 levels, aggressively getting to the rim, pulling up, dribble pull-up threes, getting to his mid-range spots as well. Brandon Miller was one of my favorite watches for the second half of last season, and I am super excited to see what he can do in year 2. At the trade deadline last year, I feel like they kind of made a mini reset where they got just a lot younger as a roster. They didn't blow it completely up, because they still have some solidified pieces that have been on the roster for a few years now, but they just hit a mini reset, got younger, retooled a little bit, if you want to call it that, and I'm super excited to see Charlotte play this next coming season. And now that we have an idea of what this team looks like, let's take a look at one of their strengths. Of course, led by LaMelo Ball, Charlotte should have very good playmaking on the roster, but it definitely goes beyond him as well. Last season, they had 5 players on their roster average more than 3 assists per game. And between LaMelo, Micic, and Trey Mann, they should always have a good playmaker running the show. While I am focusing more on the playmaking aspect of their offense, I do think that as a whole, their offense will be pretty good, above average, I would say, next year. I've already kind of talked about LaMelo Ball and his amazing playmaking abilities. I'm sure we all know that. But also Micic, I feel like he is pretty underrated with the level of playmaking he brings to the table. He was a super old rookie last season, then came in with the Gordon Hayward deal. And when he came to Charlotte, he was just running the show at the point guard slot. Also, I've been watching a lot of Olympics this offseason, and Micic has looked incredible for Team Serbia. He's one of the top playmakers in the Olympics, statistically at least, when you look at assists per game and turnovers and all that. But also, eye test wise, you could really show or see that he is a natural playmaker at that point guard slot. But even beyond these 2 guys, Trey Mann is a very positive playmaker. Grant Williams is a very positive playmaker at that power forward slot. They have a lot of guys that can connective pass. I kind of alluded to it before, but Tajon Salon, he could maybe become a good playmaker, a positive playmaker. He's shown flashes of being able to make a quick and decisive pass, so if he can bring that, that would be great. But then on top of that, with all these playmakers, you obviously have to have guys that will finish these plays, and Charlotte has plenty of those guys. Brandon Miller, like I mentioned before, being that 3-level scorer, that catch and shoot, getting him those easier 3-point shots with these playmaking on the floor now, I think could really help him as an offensive player. Of course, Miles Bridges, he was a near 20-point per game scorer last season, or he might have been above it too. He was at around 20-point per game scorer last season. He can shoot the ball relatively decently, but more as a lob threat and getting out in transition, a cutter, all of that. He could finish plays in that way. then their shooters like Josh Green and Grant Williams to be spacing the floor. They'll be able to knock down shots when they get the ball in their hands. Both their centers, Mark Williams and Nick Richards, are both great lob threats. They have plenty of playmakers and they have plenty of play finishers. So I really do think that the Charlotte Hornets offense could be top 15. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Maybe top 10, but I would say top 15. Of course, no team is perfect though, so let's take a look at one of their biggest weaknesses. Here we see a list of players that I see as positive defenders in the Charlotte Hornets rotation. As you can see, there's not many. We have Josh Green, Grant Williams, and then their two centers, Mark Williams and Nick Richards. I could really see Charlotte struggling heavily with their perimeter defense and being able to stop guys along the perimeter just because their personnel, it's not really there. Of course, bringing in Josh Green is a huge help, and he is by far their best point of attack defender. Being 6'5" and having quick feet, he's able to guard 1 through 3. You know, he can pretty easily guard 1 through 3. He's going to need to do that because he's going to be guarding the best perimeter player 1 through 3 every single game. But when you look at the rest of their personnel, they don't really have much. All of their guards are pretty weak defensively. You know, LaMelo, he's 6'7", he's got length. He is not good on defense whatsoever. Micic, Trey Mann, you know, the offense, playmaking. We were just highlighting the goods on them. Let's keep it on the good side for them because defensively, it gets pretty rough. When you look at both their power forwards, they're both undersized. I did mention Grant Williams is a positive defender in my eyes, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he still is only 6'6". He's stocky, and he's a big 6'6", but he is still only 6'6" at the power forward spot. And then Miles Bridges also, their other power forward, is only 6'7", which is still pretty undersized. The kind of silver lining here is Brandon Miller and Tijan both could be decent defenders, or at least neutral to positive defenders, because they both are super athletic. They both have great length. And whenever I see a player that has good length and good athleticism, I know they could be a good defender if they just tried. So I'm hoping that both of these guys, for the Charlotte Hornets' sake at least, can really try and give plus effort on defense because they will definitely need it. Luckily for the Hornets, the most important position on defense is center, and both of their centers are at least average to above average defenders and rim protectors. So they might be able to kind of cover up some of the mistakes that their perimeter defenders are giving up. But all in all, I feel like it could be a pretty rough defensive season out there in Charlotte. And now it is time for the fan segment, and here representing the Charlotte Hornets, I got my boy, Everything Buzz City. Thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. No problem.
If you guys do not already follow and subscribe to him, in the description right now, his YouTube channel, his Twitter. He puts out great Charlotte Hornets content, so make sure you don't miss out. But we might as well get right into it, man. I want to ask first, what is your favorite off-season move that the Hornets made so far?
I got two. The more I thought about it. So number one, I think the most important move that Charlotte has made has number one bringing in Jeff Peterson from Brooklyn and also Charles Lee from Boston. And the reason why I think so highly of Lee, and it's different from the past where we've brought in younger coaches and they've had relative good success. But I think Lee, with the experience of winning at the highest level, you know, from Atlanta, where he was under Coach Bud, and that was the team with Jeff Teague, Al Horford, Kyle Korver, Paul Millsap. Those were some really good teams. And really, when you look at the modern NBA in terms of three-point shooting, pick and rolls, pick and pops, stuff like that, Atlanta really, along with Golden State, in my opinion, was really what modernized the NBA in 2015, 2016. Then he goes to Milwaukee with Bud, wins the championship, then goes to Boston, wins the championship. And really, I've just felt he values defense, which is something Charlotte has not been good at, all right? Ranking last in defensive rating this season, and 28th or 29th in net rating. So that's something they really need. And over Summer League, I know it's just Summer League, but the team has looked great. And we've put out some terrible Summer League teams. Like last year, we were losing by 30 plus every game. We maybe won one game. But it was really bad. So I think Charles Lee is the best pickup. And player-wise, I want to go with Josh Green right now. He scored 15 points in the finals. He's not really a scorer, but I think in terms of fitting a player that can play alongside Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, a guy who can be a starter, who's not going to really demand a lot of touches, I think really replaces a Cody Martin who should be on the market for a lot of playoff teams during the regular season. And he's just a really good shooter, and good 3-and-D, young player. So I'm really interested to see what he can do, and I do think he's going to be a starter here in Charlotte.
You, funny enough, have my two answers to this too. I really like the hiring of Charles Lee. I saw a video, I think it was when he was coaching the summer league team, and just the energy that he was bringing to the practice, and like really trying to make sure the players knew he's fully bought into like building this culture here with the team. I really like him as a hiring. Again, like you said, he's a younger side coach. I think that helps a little bit too, since his team is so young, instead of having some older coach that's been in the league on like a bunch of different teams. I like what he brings. And then also the Josh Green, I think he is a very good role player to bring in because he fits the timeline. Like you said, he should easily fit alongside the main players of LaMelo and Brandon Miller. And yeah, I just feel like you got him for a really low cost, just kind of chipping into that the Klay Thompson sign and trade deal, only giving up the 2 seconds to bring him in. I feel like the value there is incredible for that pickup. And I feel like he could also have an opportunity to maybe show a little bit more on offense now that it's more of a rebuilding level team instead of the championship championship team that he was on in Dallas. He was kind of pigeonholed into that 3-and-D role. Maybe he can blossom into a little bit more, but either way, if it's just a 3-and-D, still a great player on there. But that kind of leads us into this next question here. Who do you think is the most underrated player on the Hornets right now?
All right, so the guy I think who is the most underrated is a guy who's really hated for no reason, in my opinion, Grant Williams. And we traded him for PJ Washington, and we also got a first-round pick for PJ. And immediately you realized how good Grant Williams was. Not only just energy-wise, leadership-wise, something a young team really needs is a role player that is willing to buy in to a role like that. But offensively, I mean, Charlotte would use a lot of his post playmaking ability, which is something I think not a lot of people know. But if you go back and you watch, especially the Memphis game, in that stretch where Charlotte, I think, won 5 straight games, he would be used in the high post. He would make entry passes. He was 3-point shooting. He was cutting. He was doing a lot of different things on offense and still shooting 40% from 3 after the trade. So this is a guy I'm looking at to be a solid role player for Charlotte for the next few seasons.
Yeah, I like, we mentioned before a little bit about the culture building. I feel like Grant is another player that could help build that culture. I really do like what he brings as a role player here, and as like maybe a little bit of a leadership role, a veteran role also. My personal pick for underrated though, I went Trey Mann. I feel like he really showed out once he got traded to Charlotte, the second half of the season last year. You guys were one of my favorite teams to watch post-trade deadline just because it seemed like it was just a different amount of playing with like fun. It was a fun basketball team to watch, and Trey Mann was a big part of that, offensively scoring. I'm pretty sure he would be coming off the bench now that everyone will be healthy, but in that 6-man role, I feel like he could still produce.
I think Trey's a really fun player to watch because, number one, the one thing that jumps out to me that I think Trey Mann gives a team as the most value is guard rebounding. He's a guy who's willing to get in and go for those long rebounds or even those short rebounds. A lot of players, especially me being a former player, I would usually, whenever it came to getting a rebound with bigger, stronger players, sometimes you gotta, let him have that. But Trey he don't care. He don't care. He's gonna get in. He's gonna get scrappy, and those are the type of players teams really need, especially in Charlotte, where we've had multiple years of bad guard rebounding, a bad overall rebounding from anyone outside of our center and Mark Williams and Nick Richards.
And lastly, before we get you out of here, man, what are your personal expectations for the Charlotte Hornets? I feel like the team definitely added talent with the new coaching. There seems to be a direction for this team. What are your expectations for this upcoming season?
I think the team is in a good spot, first off, for the future. I think when I talk about especially teams that are going to be in the hunt to be one of the top teams in terms of talent, I think we're one of the best young teams in the East, but I just don't think this year is the year to be a playoff team or anything like that. I still think we do need a couple more pieces. But considering the Hawks have gotten roster-wise worse, and Trae Young, we don't know his future. Chicago traded away two of their top players. Actually, did they? Yes, they did. Caruso and DeRozan. So they're looking to rebuild. They're looking to get younger. You got Washington. I don't think they're going to be good. The Pistons, I think, is a sneaky team that could be good. So Charlotte has an opportunity to be in these conversations for a lower seeding, like 9th or 10th. I think a playoff team, though, just to throw them out there, is Toronto. I think they're an 8th seed or something like that. But play-in for me, I think 32 to 38 wins is a good outlook on where they're at, because number one, I want them to stay healthy. I do not care. I don't care how many games you win. You could win 15 games. If I'm able to sit there and watch LaMelo Ball play 70 games, I am a happy man. If I can watch Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, Mark Williams all play together, I am happy. That is it. That's all I need. And my life is complete.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been a huge struggle for guys to stay healthy on Charlotte, and hopefully they can, because, like you said, they are turning that corner as a team and as a roster. I definitely think that they could maybe make some noise. Hopefully they stay healthy, though. Again, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. For you guys, again, make sure you go check out those links in the description, YouTube, Twitter. Great content all around. I appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks.
Yes, sir. No problem, man.
And now it is time for my ceiling, floor, and expectations for the Charlotte Hornets. We're going to start off by talking about the ceiling. And I feel like their ceiling is about that 9th seed. I do think that they could be a competitive team and they could make the play-in tournament. Winning 2 play-in games would be pretty tough, so I don't know if they would actually make the playoffs. But making the play-in after a few years of not is definitely progress. Again, this is all contingent on a healthy LaMelo Ball season. Brandon Miller, he can't really be in a sophomore slump for this to happen either. I'm expecting him to be pretty good next season. It could happen. I do think offensively they have a lot of talent and they could win a bunch of games. Not a bunch, but they could win more games than last season, and they could make the play-in tournament. But I do think it's a little early for them to be an actual playoff team. Then when you look at the floor for them, I could see them falling as low as the 11th seed. I definitely think their roster is way too talented to be a bottom dweller. Teams like the Nets the Pistons could still be low down there too in a weird way. The Wizards could still be down there maybe. I do think that they are a level above some of those bottom feeder teams, but they still could be below that play-in tournament when you have teams like the Raptors or the Hawks. I could see situations where they would be better than Charlotte. My expectations for them, though, funny enough, are right in the middle at that 10 seed. I feel like that's more likely where they will end up. Still in the play-in tournament. Again, it would be really, really tough for them to win 2 play-in games to make the playoffs. But still getting that high pressure experience on your team, because a lot of these guys don't have that. They also are still under year 1 of their new head coach, so would be able to get him some high intensity basketball coaching experience. I do think that Charlotte is going to have a very fun and entertaining season, and I'm for sure going to be watching a bunch of their games. They're taking the right steps. Let me know what you guys think, though. Where do you think Charlotte will end up? Let me know in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.